The voice of the Western Battle Emperor echoed throughout the heavens and earth, causing countless powerful figures to break into a cold sweat, their scalps tingling with an instinctive urge to flee the area. The Western Battle Emperor was one of the pinnacle existences in the Great Thousand Worlds, while the Flame Emperor was a legend within that realm. Both had reached the level of heavenly supreme that if they were to engage in combat, it would be catastrophic, shaking the very foundation of the world at that time. Even the entire Western Heaven realm could be affected, that a clash of that magnitude would carry with it the potential for annihilation. Upon hearing the response of the Western Battle Emperor, the Flame Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. Then, he smiled faintly and said, "Sometimes, one must give in to convenience." Though the Flame Emperor often gave off an aura of ease and gentleness, once he showed a hint of his strength, the dominance he exuded was enough to completely suppress even the Western Battle Emperor. Oh! The Western Battle Emperor's eyebrows twitched. His eyes became as sharp as an eagle's, locking onto the Flame Emperor as he slowly spoke. "I've long heard that the Flame Emperor has collected all the fires of heaven and earth to refine the Emperor Flame, unmatched in its dominance. Today, I'd like to experience it for myself." The Western Battle Emperor was well aware of the Flame Emperor's reputation, and he also knew that, in the eyes of many, the Flame Emperor was probably considered stronger than him. This was something the Western Battle Emperor could not accept. He was equally confident in his own strength and didn't think he was significantly weaker than the Flame Emperor. If it had been any other heavenly supreme who appeared, the Western Battle Emperor might have conceded easily. But since it was the Flame Emperor, he could not afford to be too lenient. Otherwise, rumors would spread, and people might think that the Western Battle Emperor was afraid of the Flame Emperor, something the proud Battle Emperor could not bear. I've also heard that the Western Battle Emperor's Battle Emperor technique is unmatched in the Great Thousand Worlds, blending spiritual power with battle intent. It's a profound technique. It's rare for us to meet today, so I'd like to learn from it. The Flame Emperor responded calmly, unfazed by the Western Battle Emperor's challenging words. The Flame Emperor knew that with the Battle Emperor's temperament, talking alone wouldn't solve anything. As the last words were spoken, the Flame Emperor raised his hand. Brilliant flames roared into the air and gathered into his palm, forming a dazzling fireball. The fireball was incredibly beautiful, as if it contained thousands of colors. Yet beneath its flickering beauty, it contained terrifying power that struck fear into the hearts of countless powerful figures. They could feel that once that fireball descended, the surrounding hundreds of thousands of miles would instantly become a sea of flames, annihilating all life within. The flames surged with each flicker, causing the space to continuously collapse, and debris fell from the shattered space, consumed by the flames, vanishing into nothingness. The fireball swirled in the Flame Emperor's hand before rapidly compressing. A few moments later, a stunning fire lotus appeared in his palm, delicate and mesmerizing. The fire lotus was so beautiful that one could almost lose their soul in its glow, unable to tear their gaze away. Everyone should avoid staring at it, or your spiritual power may ignite. The Flame Emperor's clear laugh suddenly rang out, snapping the onlookers out of their trance. At the moment they regained their senses, they felt a scorching heat within their bodies. Terrified, they realized that the spiritual power flowing within them was beginning to boil and showed signs of catching fire. Countless powerful figures were horrified, and no one dared to look at the fire lotus anymore. They quickly shifted their gaze, and only then did the boiling sensation within them subside. This scene caused many of the powerful figures to gasp in awe. The Flame Emperor was truly terrifying. Just a glance at that fire lotus almost caused their spiritual power to combust. If the Flame Emperor hadn't given them a warning, there would have been countless people spontaneously combusting by now. After waking everyone up, the Flame Emperor smiled at the Battle Emperor. With a flick of his finger, the brilliant fire lotus floated gently into the air, heading straight for the Battle Emperor. Though the fire lotus seemed to move slowly, it gave the impression that it was inescapable. It felt as though no matter where one tried to flee, even by tearing through space, that fire lotus would inevitably land on them. The Western Battle Emperor gazed at the fire lotus drifting towards him, and a solemn expression appeared on his handsome, chiseled face. Even he could sense a faint aura of danger emanating from it. The name of Emperor Flame is truly well-deserved. The Battle Emperor murmured to himself, and immediately, he dared not be the slightest bit careless. With a sudden motion, he formed a seal with both hands, and in an instant, a vast golden light surged from his body, rising like multiple golden suns. Within each of these suns, faint figures could be seen emerging. Buzz! The golden suns trembled, and an overwhelming spiritual force rippled out, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Mu Chen's gaze was fixed on the golden suns, and his expression subtly shifted. He realized that within the golden spiritual energy, he could actually detect fluctuations of battle intent. The Battle Emperor, he was actually able to merge spiritual energy with battle intent. This was something almost unbelievable. After all, battle intent was born from the powerful will of an army, and it was entirely different from spiritual energy. For example, even though Mu Chen was a battle formation master, he could never achieve such a perfect fusion of his spiritual energy and battle intent. No matter how strong battle intent was, it belonged to the army, not to the individual. But here, the Western Battle Emperor had actually accomplished this, which left Mu Chen in shock. While Mu Chen was stunned, the golden suns gathered together and transformed into a massive golden cauldron. On the cauldron, countless figures were engraved, resembling elite soldiers. The invincible war spirit cauldron. The Western Battle Emperor uttered a low shout, and the golden cauldron immediately descended, crashing down and swallowing the drifting fire lotus hole. The cauldron hovered in midair, motionless, but faint sounds of battle seemed to emanate from within it. This invincible cauldron holds the power of millions of soldiers to suppress, and when infused with spiritual energy, even if the Heavenly Supreme were to fall into it, they would be trapped. The Western Battle Emperor's voice was deep, tinged with pride. Indeed, remarkable. Emperor Flame nodded in agreement, then smiled and added, "But though this cauldron is powerful, it cannot withstand fire." As soon as Emperor Flame's words fell, the countless figures on the golden cauldron began to disappear at a visible speed. Delicate, brilliant flames began to climb out of it, and wherever the flames passed, the immense golden light melted away like residual snow. The Western Battle Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly at this moment. The brilliant flames surged endlessly, and within moments, they enveloped the entire golden cauldron. As the flames soared, the seemingly indestructible cauldron quickly transformed into golden liquid, flowing away. Whoosh! A burst of astonished exclamations erupted from the surrounding experts. None of them had expected that the battle between these two heavenly supremes would reveal a clear victor so quickly. In this moment, even they could tell that in their confrontation, it was Emperor Flame's imperial fire that was more domineering. The Western Battle Emperor stared at this scene, frozen for a moment, before his expression became somewhat complicated as he fixed his gaze on Emperor Flame. His voice was low and filled with realization. "So, you've reached this level." Their battle did not destroy the world as imagined, but the moment the result became clear, the Battle Emperor knew that the Emperor Flame before him was someone he could not defeat. Truly worthy of the title Emperor Flame. No wonder even Imoku of the most ancient clan could do nothing to you. "This time, I've only had a slight edge," Emperor Flame said, his expression not one of triumph, but a faint smile on his face. The Battle Emperor swept his large sleeve, saying, "Even a slight loss is still a loss that I will not trouble the Luotian clan." Emperor Flame looked at the Battle Emperor and smiled. "Has the Battle Emperor forgotten about my little friend Mu Chen?" Emperor Flame was a figure of great stature, so how could he not hear the implied meaning behind the Battle Emperor's words? While the Battle Emperor said he would not trouble the Luotian clan, he had not included Mu Chen and his group in that statement. Upon hearing this, the Battle Emperor furrowed his brows and said, "This person, leading his so-called Mu Manor, has caused chaos on my Western Heaven continent, and shown disrespect to my Western Heaven Battle Hall. How can I not punish him?" Emperor Flame, however, was not angered. He merely smiled and said, "Battle Emperor, don't make things more difficult than they need to be. Mu Chen invited me here today as a favor to you." As these words left his mouth, not only did the Battle Emperor frown, but many other powerful figures were left puzzled, unable to comprehend the full meaning. For the Flame Emperor to come to our Western Heaven continent, It indeed adds a touch of grandeur. The War Emperor sneered, clearly thinking that the Flame Emperor was merely boasting. The Flame Emperor smiled and shook his head, pointing to Mu Chun and saying, "Young friend Mu Chun here possesses another item that could summon a helper. That one has some ties with you, but I suspect the War Emperor wouldn't want to encounter him." "Oh." The War Emperor squinted his eyes and coldly laughed. "I would love to know, who in this great 1,000 worlds would I, the War Emperor, not want to meet?" The Flame Emperor stared at him, a smile creeping onto his face as he slowly said, "Martial ancestor, Lin Dong." Upon hearing these 4 words, everyone in the room saw the War Emperor's face turn as black as a pot bottom in an instant. Martial ancestor Lin Dong? Within Luotian City, countless powerful figures exchanged glances, their eyes filled with confusion. They couldn't help but look at each other after the Flame Emperor mentioned that name. Seeing how the War Emperor's face turned to the color of a pot bottom, the name of martial ancestor Lin Dong, the ruler of the martial realm, was known by everyone, as he was one of the few people in the great 1,000 worlds who could be mentioned alongside the Flame Emperor. His rise to power was also a legend that rivaled the Flame Emperor's, that he too came from a lower dimension. And what shocked everyone even more was that martial ancestor led the forces from that lower dimension and single-handedly defeated an invading extraterritorial evil clan. Although that demon clan was not considered very large within the extraterritorial evil clan, their power was enough to sweep through any lower dimension. Yet, in the end, they were defeated by martial ancestor, which was truly astonishing. After coming to the great 1,000 worlds, martial ancestor challenged the Ice Spirit clan alone, founded the martial realm, and quickly became one of the most renowned superpowers in the great 1,000 worlds. When it came to accomplishments, he was on par with the Flame Emperor. However, although martial ancestor was indeed legendary, he and the Flame Emperor were on the same level. Thus, the powerful figures present were puzzled as to why the Flame Emperor said that if martial ancestor had arrived today, the situation might have been entirely different. Mu Chun and Luo Li exchanged a glance, both feeling somewhat confused. Many years ago, martial ancestor went to the Ice Spirit clan to use the Ice Spirit monument to revive his wife. However, the Ice Spirit clan refused, and in the end, they summoned 3 heavenly supremes to preside over the matter. One of them was the current Western Battle Emperor. As Mu Chun and Luo Li were still puzzled, the Flame Emperor's voice, tinged with a light laugh, echoed in their ears. This Western Battle Emperor has always had a fondness for beauties. When he saw the ghost of martial ancestor's wife in the Ice Spirit monument, he was captivated and asked the Ice Spirit clan to hand her over to him as a concubine. This guy is so arrogant that he looked down upon martial ancestor, who came from a lower dimension, and even told him directly to retreat. Upon hearing this, Mu Chun couldn't help but twitch his eyes. He had met martial ancestor and knew what an extraordinary figure that elder was. For the Western Battle Emperor to say such nonsense to his face, how could martial ancestor let this go? Sure enough, the Flame Emperor's voice continued. Heh. Martial ancestor was naturally enraged. He charged out of the Ice Spirit clan's grand formation, severely injuring the Ice Spirit clan's ancestor, and then fought the 3 heavenly supremes of the Western Battle Emperor alone for 3 days and nights. He forcefully drove 2 of them to flee in a pitiful state, and the Western Battle Emperor himself was chased by the enraged martial ancestor for an entire month. After that, wherever martial ancestor appeared, the Western Battle Emperor would avoid him at all costs. Even the Western Battle Hall he established was far from the martial realm. Heh. If martial ancestor had been summoned here today, the Western Battle Emperor would never have had a peaceful life again. Mu Chun's mouth hung open, now fully understanding that the ties the Flame Emperor had mentioned earlier referred to this matter. Mu Chun finally understood why the Western Battle Emperor's face had looked so terrible when he heard martial ancestor's name. As for the Flame Emperor's last remark, he couldn't help but agree. After all, the Flame Emperor had no personal grudge with the Western Battle Emperor. So long as the latter didn't cross the line, the Flame Emperor would not make a move. At most, he would use some means to make the other retreat. But if martial ancestor had been summoned today, things would have been entirely different. With martial ancestor's clear sense of vengeance, as soon as he saw the Western Battle Emperor, the old grudge would have boiled over. No words would have been necessary. He would have rolled up his sleeves and attacked directly. By then, the Western Battle Emperor would have to face far more than the Flame Emperor's restrained methods. Even if he wanted to surrender, martial ancestor would never let him off easily. A great battle is inevitable. Moreover, this battle will likely end with the Western Battle Emperor bruised and beaten, his situation dire. After all, the martial ancestor once chased the Battle Emperor for an entire month, not to mention that now his strength has only grown more unfathomable. Chen and Luo exchanged a glance, feeling somewhat relieved that if things really came to that, the Luo clan would likely get caught in the crossfire as well, unless the martial ancestor personally killed the Battle Emperor. As the Flame Emperor and Chen discussed the connection between the Battle Emperor and the martial ancestor, the Battle Emperor's gloomy expression finally eased somewhat. He coldly spoke. Even if that kid brings the martial ancestor here, I'm not afraid of him. Despite his tough words, anyone could tell that the Western Battle Emperor's bravado was now more bluster than anything. The aggressive tone in his speech had weakened considerably. After all, the Flame Emperor, who had no grudge with him, would give him some face. But if the martial ancestor arrived, there would likely be no words, just action. The martial ancestor might even declare war on the Western Battle Hall in the name of the martial realm, and that would truly lead to a major crisis. Since that's the case, Chen, my young friend, please invite the martial ancestor here that I'm sure when he arrives, he will immediately owe you a favor. The Flame Emperor said with a slight smile, addressing Chen. Upon hearing this, Chen clenched his palm, and an ancient stone talisman appeared in his hand, ready to crush it. Wait! A thunderous shout suddenly echoed, causing Chen's head to spin, and when he looked up, he saw the Western Battle Emperor's face alternating between green and pale. After a moment, he gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I will let it go this time, for the sake of the Flame Emperor, and will not hold this disrespect against the kid." With the Western Battle Emperor's words, countless people in the surroundings quietly exhaled in relief. Although battles between heavenly supremes were rare, they certainly did not want to witness one break out here. If that happened, it would be a fight between immortals, and the mortal bystanders would suffer. However, more eyes were filled with a hint of fear as they focused on Chen. From earlier information, they had learned that Chen could not only summon the Flame Emperor, but also invite the martial ancestor. These two legendary figures of the Great Thousand Worlds had some deep connection with him. What kind of terrifying connections did he have? The Blood Spirit Sun and many of the Blood God clan's powerful members were sweating profusely. Looking at Chen now, they felt like he was truly unfathomable and someone they could never afford to offend. Other factions who had been secretly eyeing the Luo clan also had to rein in their malicious thoughts. They knew that from now on, no one would dare to harbor ill intentions toward the Luo clan. Even the Western Battle Hall would not dare to act recklessly toward them. After all, the Flame Emperor had made it very clear there was a bond of favor between him and the Luo clan. If anyone harmed the Luo clan, they would be offending the Flame Emperor's honor. At that point, the Boundless Fire Domain would probably not hesitate to teach the world the true meaning of terror. Moreover, Chen's relationship with Luo was obvious. With such powerful backing, the Luo clan would rise again. And with Luo's successful acquisition of the Luo inheritance, the clan's rise would be unstoppable. The Battle Emperor truly has a generous heart. The Flame Emperor chuckled, praising the Battle Emperor, before suddenly saying, "However, I do have one more request." The Battle Emperor frowned, somewhat annoyed, and replied, "What else is there?" The Flame Emperor smiled. "From what I know, it should soon be the time for the Western Heaven continent to contend for the son of the continent, right?" Upon hearing this, the Battle Emperor's expression immediately changed, his eyes narrowing with vigilance as he stared at the Flame Emperor. "What does this have to do with you?" The Son of the Continent was a title in the Great Thousand Worlds, granted to those with the potential and qualification to reach the Heavenly Supreme Realm. It was said that in the past millennia, most Heavenly Supremes had once held the title of the Son of the Continent. It was rumored that every large continent contained a mysterious power known as the continental power. This power was incredibly magical. Not only could it transform the body, but it could also reshape one's foundation, creating a perfect base. Most importantly, it would align one with the heavens and increase the chances of reaching the heavenly supreme realm for every Earth Supreme. This power was an irresistible temptation. The power of the continent can only be wielded by a heavenly supreme. Therefore, a continental heir can only emerge on a continent where a heavenly supreme resides. Although Tianluo continent is one of the supercontinents, it has never produced a continental heir due to the absence of a heavenly supreme throughout the years. However, the Western Heaven continent is different, with the presence of the Western Battle Emperor. All the powerful individuals under his banner have the qualification to compete for the title of continental heir. Each continental heir possesses immense potential and might one day ascend to the level of a heavenly supreme. This resource is incredibly valuable to any major force. That is why, when the Battle Emperor suddenly heard the Flame Emperor inquire about the continental heir of the Western Heaven continent, he became so wary. Seeing the Battle Emperor's guarded expression, the Flame Emperor simply smiled and then pointed at Mu Chen. I would like to request a slot on behalf of my young friend Mu Chen to compete for the title of continental heir of the Western Heaven continent. A slot to compete for the title of continental heir. In the sky, upon hearing the Flame Emperor's request, the Battle Emperor's brows furrowed tightly. He immediately responded, "That is impossible. You know better than anyone how precious the title of continental heir is. It could very well be the next heavenly supreme. Even with the vast resources of my Western Heaven continent, after centuries of accumulation through the power of the land, we can at most produce only 3 continental heirs." His rejection was absolute because the resources granted to a continental heir were simply too valuable, since the power of the continent lies deep within the land and can only be mobilized by a heavenly supreme. The title of continental heir is a powerful lure that the Western Heaven Battle Hall uses to attract strong individuals to pledge allegiance. According to the rules of the Western Heaven Battle Hall, only forces and experts who have served the Battle Hall for over 10 years are eligible to compete for the title of continental heir. This temptation was enough to entice even those who had reached the pinnacle of Earth Supreme. That was why the Battle Emperor reacted so strongly upon hearing that the Flame Emperor wanted to take a share of the Western Heaven continent's continental heir slots. After all, every single continental heir possessed the potential to become a heavenly supreme, at the very least. Their chances of success were significantly higher than ordinary cultivators. What is a continental heir? As the Battle Emperor reacted so strongly, Mu Chen turned to Luo Li with a hint of confusion. Luo Li clearly understood the matter and quickly explained it. Upon hearing her explanation, Mu Chen was momentarily stunned. He had not expected that the Flame Emperor would go out of his way to secure such an opportunity for him. Flame Emperor, your boundless fire domain is vast and powerful, boasting more than one heavenly supreme. You can produce far more continental heirs than my Western Heaven continent. Why bother trying to take what belongs to me? The Battle Emperor said in a deep voice. The Flame Emperor smiled helplessly. The boundless fire domain fought for a continental heir 100 years ago, consuming too much of its continental power that it will take at least another century to accumulate enough to produce another. But, Battle Emperor, there's no need to reject me outright. I am only asking for a chance to compete for a slot. Whether Mu Chen ultimately prevails will depend entirely on his own strength. If he fails, then that is his own problem. At this, the Flame Emperor chuckled playfully and said, "Or do you think that among all the countless powerhouses in your Western Heaven continent, not a single one can suppress Mu Chen?" The Battle Emperor let out a cold laugh, casting a sidelong glance at Mu Chen. A mere lower Earth Supreme? In my Western Heaven continent, he wouldn't even make a ripple. Dreaming of becoming a continental heir? Pure fantasy. Then what are you so worried about? The Flame Emperor asked with a grin. The Battle Emperor snorted. Nothing is absolute. This boy does have some tricks up his sleeve. What if he actually succeeds? That would be a huge loss for me. Moreover, the countless forces and experts under my Western Heaven Battle Hall have all come here for the chance to become a continental heir. They have pledged their loyalty and contributed greatly to my Western Heaven continent. If Mu Chen can just participate on a whim, how would I justify that to them? So, Flame Emperor, there's no need to try and provoke me. I will not grant him this opportunity. Seeing this unfold, Chen quickly whispered to the Flame Emperor. Senior Flame Emperor, I truly appreciate your kindness, but since the Battle Emperor is unwilling, we cannot force the matter. Although the continental heir was incredibly enticing, Chen didn't want to see the Flame Emperor compromising his dignity for him. That would be an immense debt of gratitude to repay. Upon hearing this, the Flame Emperor smiled faintly and said, I will help you seek this opportunity, but it is not out of personal feelings that I hope that the great thousand worlds can once again produce someone with the same potential as ourselves, and you possess that potential. Although the great thousand worlds seem peaceful now, the extraterritorial clan is lurking in the shadows, watching with keen interest. Their strength is beyond your imagination, and even I have my reservations to prevent the great thousand worlds from being invaded and swallowed. We need more powerful beings. Among the continents with heavenly supremes presiding over them, only the Western Heaven continent is competing for the continental heir in the short term. We cannot miss this opportunity. Chen was slightly taken aback. On one hand, he hadn't expected the Flame Emperor to regard him so highly, believing he had the potential to reach the pinnacle. On the other hand, he admired the Flame Emperor's open-mindedness, as he was acting from the perspective of the survival of the great thousand worlds to assist him. The Flame Emperor waved his hand with a smile, and then turned back to the Battle Emperor, calmly saying, Battle Emperor, the qualification I seek for Chen is not that of a lower Earth Supreme, but rather that of an upper Earth Supreme. This statement caused even the Battle Emperor to change his expression slightly, casting a curious glance at Chen. Then, with a hint of mockery, he said, Flame Emperor, you really have high hopes for this kid. Typically, the competition for the continental heir is divided into 3 arenas: the lower Earth Supreme battlefield, the upper Earth Supreme battlefield, and the perfect Earth Supreme battlefield. As the name suggests, the lower Earth Supreme battlefield is for those at the lower Earth Supreme level, while the upper Earth Supreme battlefield is where various upper Earth Supremes from the Western Heaven continent compete. Each battlefield has a position for a continental heir and corresponds to the 3 realms of Earth Supreme. After all, if it were a free-for-all, the positions would likely go to those ancient experts at the perfect Earth Supreme level, who, despite losing their sharpness, have a better chance of succeeding at Heavenly Supreme than the former 2. That is why this rule exists for the competition for the continental heir. Chen's strength is at the lower Earth Supreme level, so he should normally enter the lower Earth Supreme battlefield. However, the Flame Emperor is now claiming to seek the upper Earth Supreme arena for him, which the Battle Emperor finds rather ridiculous. After all, while Chen's various techniques have proven formidable enough to dominate the lower Earth Supremes, they would likely fall short against upper Earth Supremes. Across the realms, the Blood Spirit Sun and some upper Earth Supremes also looked at Chen with unusual interest, their expressions clearly indicating that they felt the Flame Emperor was overly elevating Chen. Humph. The Flame Emperor valuing Chen this much doesn't worry him that this kid might be overhyped and crash down. Once this kid enters the upper Earth Supreme battlefield, he might be eaten clean. The Blood Spirit Sun sneered coldly in his heart. Yet, deep down, he actually preferred Chen to enter the upper Earth Supreme battlefield, as he would also be participating in the competition for the continental heir. If he encountered Chen then, he could simply strike him down. In such a situation, Chen's defeat would merely mean he was outmatched and trying to show off, a case of self-inflicted harm. Letting Chen enter the upper Earth Supreme battlefield should give the Battle Emperor some peace of mind, right? And if Chen actually secures the position of continental heir, then perhaps that would be truly deserved, the Flame Emperor said with a slight smile. The Battle Emperor's eyes flickered slightly, his resistance diminishing. Given the strength Chen had previously shown, he could genuinely have a chance to claim victory in the lower Earth Supreme battlefield. But tossing this kid into the upper Earth Supreme arena, even the Battle Emperor doubted he could stir up much of a storm. The upper Earth Supremes were all cunning and robust in their foundational power. Throwing Chen into that mix was akin to releasing a rabbit among wolves. The Battle Emperor welcomed this outcome. Although the Flame Emperor was mediating the situation, he still harbored resentment towards Chen. This frustration needed an outlet, and with the Flame Emperor protecting Chen, the Battle Emperor felt powerless. Yet, once Mu Chen entered the Upper Earth Supreme battlefield. With just a slight gesture from the Battle Emperor, Mu Chen would undoubtedly find himself in dire straits. It wouldn't be long before he would shamefully abandon his position and flee. Thinking of that moment, the Western Battle Emperor felt a sense of relief as the anger in his heart seemed to ease considerably. However, although there was some softening, the Western Battle Emperor was no pushover. He pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Originally, I had to give face to the Flame Emperor, but the position of continental heir is just too important." The Flame Emperor, upon hearing this, smiled faintly. He suddenly flicked his finger, and a streak of light shot out from his sleeve, eventually floating in front of the Western Battle Emperor. As the light gathered, it transformed into a pill about the size of a dragon's eye. This pill was as transparent as crystal, with pill energy swirling around it. Strangely, dragon and phoenix images seemed to dance around it, and a fragrant aroma wafted from it. Just the scent alone caused the spiritual energy within countless strong cultivators to become much more potent. The Western Battle Emperor stared at the pill in front of him, a slight tremor in his heart. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "The Dragon Phoenix Celestial Pill?" This was a rare and high-level divine pill. Even for a heavenly supreme, it held immense value. Such pills were always priceless in the world, and whenever they appeared, they were immediately sought after by all the heavenly supremes. Across the land, countless strong cultivators gazed longingly at the pilled eye in the great thousand worlds. Everyone knew that what made the Flame Emperor most enviable wasn't his extraordinary power, but his unparalleled alchemy skills. Anything produced by the Flame Emperor was a masterpiece. The pills refined by the Flame Emperor were highly sought after by countless powerful figures. When this pill appeared before them, even the Western Battle Emperor's eyes subtly glowed with interest. "With this pill, I believe the Western Battle Emperor will not refuse, right?" The Flame Emperor said with a smile. The Western Battle Emperor clicked his tongue, pondered for a moment, and then extended his hand to take the Dragon Phoenix Celestial Pill. This divine pill truly tempted him. But more importantly, the Flame Emperor had made repeated concessions. If he pushed any further, he might offend him. His relationship with the martial ancestor was already strained, and if he also became enemies with the Flame Emperor and the boundless fire domain, things would get complicated. He took the divine pill and gave Mu Chen a cold glance before nodding lightly at the Flame Emperor. Given the Flame Emperor's face, "I will allow this boy to enter the Upper Earth Supreme battlefield to compete for the position of continental heir of our Western Heaven continent. However, the battlefield is dangerous. If this boy is too weak and perishes, that's his own fault. No one else can be blamed." Upon hearing the Western Battle Emperor's words, the Flame Emperor smiled slightly and said, "In that case, thank you, Western Battle Emperor." The Western Battle Emperor waved his hand and then invited, "A month from now, the contest for the continental heir of our Western Heaven continent will begin. I invite you to come to the Western Battle Emperor Palace to watch the grand battle." The Flame Emperor nodded with a smile and said, "I will definitely come. Then, I will await that day and greet you with great respect. Farewell." The Western Battle Emperor chuckled. Then without lingering, he cupped his fist toward the Flame Emperor. Golden light erupted, and in the next moment, the golden light enveloped Elder Winterchill, and the two of them disappeared into the sky before everyone's eyes. From the moment the Flame Emperor arrived until his departure, the Western Battle Emperor never mentioned having Luo Li take on the role of Holy Maiden, because from the moment Mu Chen had invited the Flame Emperor, he knew he could no longer pressure people with force. Even though Mu Chen appeared to him as just a mere lower Earth Supreme, someone he could easily crush, sometimes, in this world, there was more than just one kind of power. Mu Chen might only be a lower Earth Supreme, but he understood how to borrow strength. Borrowing strength simply meant relying on others to help resolve a situation, but the Western Battle Emperor was a man who understood that it wasn't easy to borrow power in this world. Mu Chen, however, was able to leverage the Flame Emperor's influence, and that alone proved his exceptional nature. After all, how many people in the great thousand worlds could do such a thing? Moreover, besides the Flame Emperor's influence, Mu Chen also had the martial ancestor's backing. Therefore, the Western Battle Emperor understood that with such means, even though Mu Chun was only a lower Earth Supreme, he could no longer suppress him with his own Heavenly Supreme status. If he insisted on doing so, he might provoke the Flame Emperor or the martial ancestor to that point. Even someone like the Western Battle Emperor would likely pay a heavy price. Thus, the Western Battle Emperor wisely gave up on his plan to have Luo Li serve as the Holy Maiden of the Western Heaven Battle Hall, all because of that small lower Earth Supreme. Although the War Emperor felt a sense of frustration for being pushed to this point by a lower Earth Supreme, after some thought, he couldn't help but feel a trace of admiration for Mu Chun. This was because the latter, with the strength of a lower Earth Supreme, had managed to force even a Heavenly Supreme like him into a deadlock, and in the end, had even cost him the opportunity to compete for the position of the continental heir. The tactics and intelligence displayed by Mu Chun were truly astonishing to this moment. The War Emperor might have begun to understand why even figures like the Flame Emperor were so protective of this young man. Was because he truly possessed the potential of a budding dragon. As the War Emperor departed, the pressure that had hung over Luo God's city finally dissipated. After a brief moment of silence, a deafening cheer erupted from the Luo God clan. It was the kind of wild joy one experiences after surviving a catastrophe. The events of the day had been so tumultuous that, during several moments, countless members of the Luo God clan had been filled with despair, thinking that today would be the day their entire clan was annihilated. Yet, who could have imagined that the plot would be reversed time and time again? In the end, their Luo God clan not only survived intact, but also gained the greatest benefits. Tears of joy streamed down the faces of many clan members, for they knew that after surviving such a catastrophe, the Luo God clan would surely rise from the ashes. Luo Li had successfully obtained the Luo Shen inheritance, and, for the first time in history, had received the recognition of their ancestors. It was clear that their Luo God clan was on the verge of producing a great empress. Perhaps, under Luo Li's leadership, the Luo God clan could even regain the glory of ancient times. Amid the celebrations, countless gazes turned toward the young figure in the sky. These eyes were filled with deep gratitude and admiration. They all knew that the breakthrough today had been orchestrated almost entirely by this young man. It was he who led a powerful force to the Luo God clan, striking down the Blood God clan's ambitions. It was he who, with an ironclad attitude, stood up when the Supreme War Emperor of the Western Heaven Battle Hall arrived. It was also he who, during the confrontation in the Battle Hall, called upon the Flame Emperor of the Boundless Fire Domain. Each of these perilous encounters could have led to the Luo God clan's ruin. Yet, in the end, it was this young man's brilliant strategies that turned danger into safety. One could say that Mu Chen's performance today had won the hearts of all the Luo God clan members. Perhaps only a man of such exceptional caliber could be worthy of their esteemed empress. Emperor Mu. Emperor Mu. Suddenly, from within Luo God's city, a fanatical voice rang out. The sound seemed to spread like magic, and countless members of the Luo God clan, their faces flushed, shouted in unison. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with their deafening voices. Emperor Mu. Emperor Mu. Luo Qingya, Luo Xiao, and other powerful figures from the Luo God clan exchanged glances, clearly stunned. In their Luo God clan, there was only one empress recognized. However, if the empress had someone she loved, and that person was also accepted by the Luo God clan, then he would become another emperor of their people. It was evident that the members of the Luo God clan were not blind. They could clearly see the relationship between Luo Li and Mu Chun. And most importantly, Mu Chen's performance today had conquered every single member of the Luo God clan. In their joy at surviving this calamity, they could not help but express their deepest approval aloud. It was a true expression of the people's will. Luo Qingya, Luo Xiao, and the other experts from the Luo God clan's side then exchanged smiles before raising their arms to shout in unison. After all, it wasn't just the ordinary clan members who had been conquered. Even they, at this moment, were truly convinced. After all, how many people in this world could face the pressure of a heavenly supreme and still remain fearless, while also employing methods to balance the scales? Luo, heavenly god. Hearing the unified cheers of the crowd, couldn't help but smiled. He looked at the tall young figure in the sky and sighed, remembering the time several years ago when he had gone to the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy to bring Luo Li back. Back then, the young man was still immature, like a fledgling eagle in an ivory tower, sharp but ultimately inexperienced at that time. Luo, heavenly god, didn't think much of him, that he merely regarded him as a lucky boy who had caught Luo Li's attention. However, who could have imagined that, in just a few short years, the young man would return as a savior, appearing before him with the presence of a hero? Over the years, the boy's youthful naivety had faded, and his once sharp edge was now fully revealed, exposing a brilliance that left others in awe. Still, Luo Li's judgment is spot on, sighed Luo Tianshan. Over the years, Luo Li had borne a great deal of pressure within the clan. Everyone had questioned her judgment, yet she remained unwavering. The deafening calls echoed across the sky, and Luo Li's original noble elegance seemed to vanish in that moment. Her bright eyes sparkled, her delicate face flushed, and her cheeks slightly lowered in a rare, shy expression that made the hearts of countless onlookers flutter. She knew very well what the title bestowed upon Mu Chun by the Luo God clan represented. It was the greatest form of recognition for Mu Chun, meaning that every member of the Luo God clan had acknowledged her relationship with him. She looked toward Luo Tianshan, who, smiling kindly, nodded at her. His expression made his thoughts abundantly clear. In the sky, facing the overwhelming cheers, Mu Chun scratched his head, then turned to look at the beautiful girl, her bright eyes and radiant smile capable of making the sun and moon pale in comparison. His heart stirred uncontrollably. Luo Li, Mu Chun softly called out. Then, feeling a bit embarrassed, he looked into her dazzling eyes and said, "It seems my promise to you from before may have been a bit too optimistic." Years ago, in that tranquil spirit hall, the young boy had promised the girl that he would become a world-shaking powerhouse to shield her from the winds and storms. Luo Li gazed at the young man's handsome and resolute face before her, her eyes moistening, her heart aching as she recalled those words. Perhaps others might find such a promise laughable, but only she knew that, over these years, the man before her had truly been moving forward, tirelessly pursuing that very goal. The path to becoming a world-shaking powerhouse was fraught with hardships, filled with thorns that could distort even the strongest of wills, leaving one battered and scarred. She understood well the immense sacrifices the young man had made and how many life-or-death battles he had endured to reach this point. Thinking of this, a subtle ache stirred in her heart. "You've worked hard," Luo Li murmured, her lips gently biting down on her red lip, her eyes glowing with tenderness. Mu Chun smiled faintly, and looking at Luo Li, he asked, "Luo Li, do you remember what I told you before you left?" Luo Li nodded lightly. The scenes from that day were still vivid in her mind, and Mu Chen's words echoed once more in her ears. "Luo Li, I like you. Though the Luo God clan may seem too distant for me now, and I can't get your grandfather or the clan to accept me. They might even question your judgment, thinking you've fallen for a lucky young man. And I know you'll face a lot of pressure, but, believe me, one day, I'll come to the Luo God clan. And when that time comes, I will make everyone see that what you found was not just an ordinary stone in the desert, but a diamond brighter and more dazzling than all the stones combined." Mu Chun stared into the beautiful girl's eyes and smiled softly. "And all these years I've been striving for that." At that moment, Luo Li could no longer contain the overwhelming emotions surging within her heart. Tears instantly welled up and streamed down her face.